Hello, and welcome to our 32nd edition of FSI Fridays. I'm Johansson, live in Charlotte, joined by
Edwin in Boston.
Hey, Edwin, what do we have lined up for today?
Thanks, Johansson, and those in the audience. Today, we're going to talk about the business challenges insurers face and a huge problem that needs to be solved.
Second, we'll then discuss the approach to those challenges and how Shift Solution leverages AI and turns data into decisions, making real business impact.
Third, we'll see some really cool demos that brings this to reality.
Then we'll wrap it up with Q&A.
Today on FSI Fridays.
For those of you watching live or on YouTube, as a quick reminder, we'll spend about 30 minutes on today's topic and leave the last 10 to 15 minutes to address any burning questions.
So please use the Q&A window and we'll monitor for questions during the presentation. If you're watching the recording, feel free to use the comments below to ask your questions.
Let's get started and meet the presenters for today. Edwin, who's our special guest this week?
We are thrilled to be joined by Marcel Gordon and Dan Donovan from our partner Shift Technology. Let's start with you, Marcel. Thanks for being on the show today. Can you let the audience know what your role is at Shift and what your typical day entails? We also hear you always have to buy 2 pairs of shoes. What's that about?
Thanks, Edwin. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here with you guys. So I'm the VP product at Shift, which means my day-to-day is working on the product strategy and making sure that our product development teams are building something that's really going to deliver value to insurers who are our customers. And it's true, I often have to buy 2 pairs of shoes. My fun fact is that I have 2 feet that are different sizes, a full size different. And so I guess I'm sharing that to make other people who have the same challenge feel a little more comfortable with their feet.
You just made my dad feel better because he has the same thing going on. So thanks for sharing that, Marcel.
That's great.
Thanks, Marcel. We're also honored to be joined by Dan Donovan. Can you share with the audience your role at Shift? And we also hear you took on a new experience after hitting 40.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. Happy to be here. I'm the head of value engineering for Shift Technology. So I lead our pre-sales and customer success organization with our goal of making the happiest customers in the world using our software as a service solutions. My fun fact, I guess, is not nearly as interesting as Marcel's, but unique in its own right, in that I didn't eat broccoli until I was 40 years old.
Thanks for sharing that, Dan. I heard the happiest customers, so you guys are like the Disney of for insurers. That's great. So let's jump right in. Dan, with all the stuff happening around the world these days, from your perspective, can you level set and provide a foundation of the huge challenges the insurance industry is facing today?
Happy to do it. Yeah. So really, there's a big push within insurance companies today, obviously, to manage costs, right? So they want to improve both their loss costs and their expense ratios. So they're very important thing for them, but they have to do that it coincides with the need to drive improved customer experience, right? There's a rising expectation from customers that they want improved interactivity with their insurers. They want to be able to improve how the claims process works and really improve that customer experience overall. And then the other challenges they face, that they've got lots of data, but it typically is siloed within their organization. So the data is sitting in different places all over, and they don't have line of sight into all of it. And they have challenges bringing that data together to get a holistic view of it and to take actions, right? And to empower that data to be used to improve their claims process and other things. So we really try to focus on helping bring these things together for our customers, whether it be through our claims automation technologies, where we can improve the customer experience by creating a more seamless interaction between the customer and the insurer using mobile and other things, while helping drive down costs and reduce expenses through gaining efficiencies through the use of our technology. From a data insight standpoint, we do this with our fraud detection as an example, where we're able to bring together all of an insurer's data and help them understand if their claims may have some level of suspicion to them, and whether they should be kicking those claims out of their claim process to be investigated by their fraud teams, or if they can allow these claims to go through a straight-through handling process to, again, move towards creating a better customer experience by moving claims faster, settling them faster.
Thanks, Dan. So, Marcel, there always is a ton of data that can be collected. And through your research at Shift, on how to effectively address this problem, what have you found to be the right approach to taking this data? maybe even turning it into actionable next steps in the decision-making process?
Yeah, so there's really two keys for us. One of them is cloud. If you want to work with a lot of data, you want to be able to scale with the large and growing amount of data that we have involved in a business like insurance. Cloud is key. And the second is AI, right? Once you have all that data, what are you going to do with it? And AI is really a way to be able to drive insights and ultimately decisions. That's what it's all about for us, from all that data. And we've ended up with a model that's applied pretty consistently across what we do, and I think it applies to what a lot of folks are doing with data, which is there's a first step around really collecting and organizing the data, and doing a bunch of work to get it in one place so that you have this data pool. Secondly, you need to put it in some kind of structure so that it's usable, right? We on our side, we've built this kind of insurance data model that helps us to structure any insurer's data into a universal view, which means that you can then work with it consistently regardless of where it came from. And thirdly, you then need some kind of mechanism, some sort of machinery for presenting this data to a decision-making system. You need to, just having data sitting around in storage is great, but you actually need to put it into a machine that you can then use to do some kind of analysis. And finally, there's the analysis itself, right? So for us, as I said, this is really techniques that come from the AI library. All the techs that help us to take structured and unstructured data, to make decisions, to make predictions, which enables us then to automate and optimize the decision making that the insurers are doing.
No, thanks for those insights, Marcel. That's a nice technical approach, but how do you connect it to real business problems? I mean, Dan, this one's for you. How do you bridge the gap between the technical solutions and the people? Or in other words, how do you make the people successful with the technology solution?
It's a great question, Edwin, and this is really where my team comes in within our organization too, and working with our customers. But it's both, our interactions with our customers, but how our technology works as well. You can have the best models in the world. They can produce the most interesting and impactful output. But if you don't effectively have a way to operationalize that technology, there's not a lot of value to it, right? So we put a lot of emphasis on this with our technology, both our claims automation and our fraud detection solutions. We're providing a certain level of decision support and insight, and we do it in a way that really adds value to our customers and allows them to take action against these insights. So we mentioned before, we're looking at a variety of data sources, a lot of volume of data, and we're using that to score for things such as fraud, and then producing an output in an actionable way. And I think this will become more clear when I show the demo, but really it's not enough to just produce reason codes as an example, right? You have to have clear, insightful information that's business friendly, that makes sense to the user, that they can use to develop their investigative action plan or determine what the next action is they need to take in helping to manage a claim for a customer to get the best outcome.
It's a bit of an urban legend from Shift's history, which is that when Shift first started working on claims fraud, we thought that all we needed to do was detect the right claims to look at, and everything else would follow. And in fact, we thought we would just send a spreadsheet of suspicious claims to the insurers, and everything else would be great. And what we learned over the last few years is really that it's one thing to do the AI work and understand which claims to focus on, but you have to make it operational by providing a great tool and a workflow and enabling people to have impact with the data that you've surfaced. And so that's what Dan can show with our demo.
Well, that's great. Our audience loves demos. So can you share your screen and start to bring this to life for our audience?
Looking at the screen, this already looks like a bunch of useful data, and it looks like it really matters to the insurer. I mean, you can tell right away that this data matters. So can you give the audience a tour of this dashboard and also where this data is being pulled from?
Yes, so this is the alert page for our fraud detection solution. So this is where users first come in and land when they're using our product. And what you've got here is a lot of information that's coming directly from an insurance carrier's claims data and policy data and other external data sources that we are accessing on their behalf from data that they're sending to us. So you can see here quickly, you've got information such as claim numbers, you've got circumstances of loss coming from claim notes within the data, estimated amounts coming from reserve information or estimates that have been generated. And then we supplement that here by providing some additional information on what we believe the suspicion is based on our analysis of the claim. some of the circumstances surrounding the loss, and a fraud propensity score that we show here, which is a likelihood that this claim has some level of potential fraud or suspicion involved with it. But really, we're doing this by aggregating all of a customer's data from within their own claim systems and policy systems, as well as external data sources like medical bills, public records, web crawling, and other things.
So Dan, can you actually walk us through maybe one of these specific alerts on these claims, and maybe give us an example of how you're tying this external data for correlation?
Sure can. So here we're gonna look at an actual alert. It's simple as clicking in, and this takes us to our alerts detail page. So this is where we really get into another level of detail beyond that, the alerts. This is where we're really starting to be able to show the user what we've produced for them as far as what we believe the suspicious activity is on the claim, and be able to highlight for them important data elements that will help them in their decision making and creating their investigative action plans to take action on these claims. You can see we use things like Google Maps here to show, for example, where an insured is located, in this case, where their stolen vehicle was recovered and found burned. And you can see it's pretty close to where they actually live. The real important information for the user, though, is down here. And this is the output from our models, where we're indicating what we believe is the suspicion here, where we've got a vehicle that was involved in a theft, it was stolen, and later recovered, burned, and we believe the insured might have tried to sell it online prior to the theft claim coming in. And then we provide this additional, very detailed level of insight that helps understand why we've come up with this suspicion. And this goes to the end user piece again here, where this is the information that an investigator can really focus on, go out and follow up on, or use to develop their investigative action plan. So here we identified that the policyholder tried to sell their vehicle online before the loss, and that the current value of the vehicle compared to the purchase price is low. We also here have information from the policy data that this policy has a depreciation waiver or gap coverage on it, which is due to expire in a couple months, which would allow the insured to get the full value of this vehicle, even if it's currently worth less than what they purchased it for. Really interesting piece here is our use of external data sources. We're able to web crawl, and we're able to find that this vehicle had been put up for sale prior to the theft claim and later taken down, but we'd captured this post and we're able to keep it for posterity's sake. We do a lot of interesting things with text analysis and NLP and other types of AI and detection capabilities here, but we were able to match this back to the insured, even though they changed their information here between both text and numerical. But we were able to say this is a phone number that matches back to this particular insured and say that they'd had that vehicle up for sale. And then lastly, what I'll mention here is we can also ingest other external data sources, such as the fact that this vehicle has a transponder anti-theft system, which would require both keys to the vehicle for the vehicle to be driven. We get this from external data, such as vehicle characteristics lists. And lastly, we pull text from the claim notes. And here we found text in the claim notes that the insured accounts for all the keys to the vehicle, which would have made this vehicle difficult to steal because of the theft system. And lastly, we can do things like provide additional insights by showing the full history of this insured's claiming behavior. So we can see that it had a prior windscreen damage claim and then the current claim.
Wow, Dan, that felt like you pulled a David Blaine magic trick on me, or even like an infomercial. But wait, there's more. Then bam, you show us that Craigslist correlation. It's pretty cool stuff. So Marcel, can you tell us what's going on behind the scenes, and how is AI being leveraged to learn and improve making these correlations, providing value to the insurers as well as the clients?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true that sometimes when we show, and often when we talk about AI, it does feel like we're talking about magic. And I think that's it's a bit of a pity, really. I think it's going to become more and more something that people understand and need to understand. And so just to go under the hood a little bit, clearly there's the data management part that I talked about a little bit earlier, of how do you get the data in the right place, in the right state, all put together into a single view, and that's kind of the prerequisite for actually doing this work. But then what kind of analysis, what kind of AI are we actually doing? We're analyzing documents, right? We're making sure that that we are able to get into the unstructured data that the insurer has and use it to inform our decisions. We're doing image analysis to be able to to be able to pull out anything in the image which is unusual or anomalous, to understand if it's a copy of an image from somewhere else, or if we are able to recognize that it's a photo of the same damage taken from different angles, in order to detect reuse of images. We're using NLP, as Dan mentioned, to analyze things like police reports and claim notes, and understand what's happening when we have just unstructured text as part of the data. And most importantly, we're really able to drive high accuracy by having an effective scoring system. And there's really two aspects to that. One is that scoring is not, if you try and do it using rules, if you try and say, well, if this, then that, you end up with something very crude and rigid and often quite fragile. When you do it with AI, you're able to mix in a whole bunch of factors and make a quite nuanced decision about whether this is worth investigating. And that's what really drives the difference between these kind of AI-based tools and things that were being done in the past. And the second part of really that learning and AI part is, how do you use the feedback, right? You have all these techniques that you're applying to your data, and you're using them to generate insights or decisions. But unless you're looking at the results and trying to learn from what happens afterwards, the system's not going to be as effective as it could be. So a big part of the challenge is really, how do you make it so the system has a feedback loop? And we do that by capturing explicitly from the claims handlers feedback on, for example, savings when it comes to fraud, or decisions when it comes to claims automation. But we also look at implicit feedback, right? If we think that a claim should be settled, but in the end the claim is rejected, then we know that there was something about the decision that was not correct, and that gives us the opportunity to learn. So you have to find a way, you have to construct a mechanism to find the feedback and feed it back into all these systems so that you can improve the AI work that you're doing.
Wow, this is really interesting stuff. It almost makes me wonder, how was this done years ago, before Shift created this amazing solution? It's almost like, what did we do before we had the internet? Where did we used to go to encyclopedias and went to the libraries to find information? This is really a game changer. So how did insurers used to do this before?
Sure. It's interesting because it's not even how they did it before. It's how a lot of insurers are still doing it today, unfortunately. And we'd like to help them move to this new way of doing things. But in the past, and for a lot of insurers today, this is still a very manual process, and precisely for some of the reasons we mentioned at the start of our discussion today, where you've got data that's siloed and disparate sources and hard to bring together to get a holistic view of what's going on within your claims, what's going on within your policies. Lack of ability to take external data and even internal data and scale it in a way that it's highly usable across all of your claims, right? Today, typically, you'll have insurers that if they're doing an investigation or researching something, they're going out and linking out to an external data source. They're not bringing in that data and using it, across all their claims. It's very much a one-off process. So that's really how it happens today. Claim handlers are required to identify suspicious cases. It's not their core responsibility or their core task. It's kind of an ancillary thing they're required to do that they're not necessarily incentivized on, right? And so it's just part of their job, and it creates a big gap, and it creates a lot of leakage. And this is where our technology can help improve these things, where we talk about being able to bring all of the data together for the holistic view, being able to give insights that aren't just sitting inside the core system where you have to move around, but through a fully functional UI, and really helping to limit the human factor that can create issues of accuracy and detection around things like fraud, right? Where, again, as I said, they're not incentivized to do it. And what you'll typically see is 80% of your referrals come from 20% of your claim handlers today, right? Our technology allows you, again, I keep using the word, but to scale this process and this approach, to automate it, to cast a wider net, to reduce that leakage and reduce those missed opportunities by treating all claims equally and looking at them with a very broad view through the AI, finding that fraud and surfacing it in a way that it makes it easier for claim handlers to take action on.
Oh, thanks, Dan. That's really good information. So, Marcel, if you're an insurer, what's involved in deploying something like this? I mean, it sounds nice, but how do they get started? There's a tons of data and numerous systems currently in place. So what does this journey look like?
Yeah, I think for insurers, the important thing is to get the strategic technical decisions right. For us, it's clear like, what we've been able to achieve would not have been possible without the cloud. I think when I think about cloud and it really AI and this kind of large scale data analysis, it's the killer application for the cloud. You can take advantage of a lot of technology that's being built by many different people. You can take advantage of the scalability in processing, the scalability in storage, and as you guys know at Microsoft, this stuff is really evolving at a super rapid rate. And so having that ability to leverage everything that's happening in the cloud is really key. So I guess my first message is, if you want to do this kind of thing, if you want to be able to make decisions, if you want to be able to automate, you need to embark on that cloud journey, right? You need to engage with cloud as part of your IT strategy. For us, I think another thing that's been really key for us is that this is really something that you can deploy alongside in parallel to your existing core systems, right? This is not a rip and replace. You as an organization, you've made heavy investments in core systems, whether it's claims management or customer relationship management, and you don't really want to throw all that out because there's people day to day working on it. Often it's a system of record that's storing all of your data. It has a whole bunch of history. It has a whole bunch of logic that's already been built into it. So this is not a kind of rip and replace. What you want to do is find a way to connect that with these kind of cloud-based AI solutions, so that the two solutions can live, side by side. And so that gives you an environment where technically, when you're dealing with AI and this ability to make decisions on a lot of data, you can have quite an independent environment where you can iterate really rapidly on the models, where you can work with the data with a lot more flexibility because you're able to put it in different kinds of storage and different structure. And so this idea of really deploying not just in the cloud, but in parallel, coupled, integrated with your existing core systems, we believe this is really the right strategy. Obviously, that's how we do it. But I would also say, even if you're not doing it with us, you really want to think about how do you leverage cloud? How do you leverage AI in parallel to your existing core systems?
So when you think about fraud, it's really individuals being opportunistic. But what happens in the situation where maybe there are multiple actors and maybe this issue is happening at a much larger scale? Can you share your screen again and maybe walk us through a demo that makes these connections when something larger at scale is occurring to help these insurers identify these common threads?
This is a really interesting use case here that you talk about. I'm going to show you an example of how we detect network fraud, and that's relationships between a number of entities. Can be insureds or claimants. In this instance, it's providers of services. But here is an example I'm going to show you of a kickback scheme that we were able to detect using our technology. This really goes to what we were talking about before, the ability to leverage large amounts of data and then automate the analysis of that data. In a more typical environment today, people would do this in a manual way and try to put together, all of the individual players involved in a large scheme like this. We're able to do this by looking across all of a customer's data and automating the detection of these networks by creating and identifying the relationships between these providers that are interesting and create very strong connections. So what you're looking at here is a kickback scheme involving medical providers, laboratories, and clinics. As you move around the network, you can see an individual up here who's the owner of 4 different clinics, 3 labs and a pharmacy, and also has a connection here to another individual. They share the last name, so we show that there's a connection here through this gray link. You can also then see around here how you've got different providers associated to each other or to specific clinics, where they're sharing claims between each other. And this is where they're actually making illegal referrals back and forth between each other to drive up medical treatment. You can see there's an attorney involved here as well that's involved on 47 claims, and she shares relationships with many of these providers and clinics. So graphically, we're able to represent this in a way that makes it easy to understand all these connections between a number of players. And then we take it a step further by providing a level of detail down here, by looking at the data, running statistical analysis, looking for suspicion scenarios and leveraging additional external data to really point out very specifically why we believe this network is suspicious and what they're doing inside of this network, so that an investigator can take very specific actions and frame very specific questions for when they're talking to people that have been involved in some of these claims or treated with some of these providers. So here we believe we've identified a kickback scheme involving 56 claims with these labs, and you can see that we're able to show kind of here's how they're linked. 20% of claims they share, 45% of claims. We can use external data like the Better Business Bureau here, where you can see that this lab has a very bad rating, and when you look at some of the information, you can see that people are talking about fraudulent billing. So that's an example of bringing in the external data. And we're able to identify for the insurer the exposure to this network. So unfortunately, in this case, it was found very late. We did this as a kind of a historical retrospective for this customer to help them see what might be in their data. And they'd already paid over $3 million out to these providers within this network.
You know, I think a key insight and takeaway from this demo is the power of the solution, showing that things are happening in a systemic way, which is what hurts insurance companies and potentially driving up insurance rates for end customers like you and me. So, you know, really sounds like the solution will be able to lower everyone's insurance premiums. Like Oprah, you get a lower premium, you get a discount. You know, thanks for that demo. Marcel, this pretty cool demo that Dan just walked, specifically to insurance fraud, but the ability to take this and apply it to other areas must be possible. So, you know, the value of this and to our other financial services customers is they don't necessarily have the data scientists and the models that they're training for other data sets, but they do have that data. Can you talk to us about how customers can leverage a partner like Shift to accelerate their analytical ability and time to value?
Absolutely, yeah. So you spotted it, and we spotted it. It took us maybe a little bit longer. You spotted it in minutes. It took us a couple of years, but what we realized is that a lot of the assets that we've built, a lot of the technical assets that we've built, in really addressing claims fraud detection and claims automation, are actually generic technical assets, right? And they can really help with a range of problems for insurers. So once you have a good system for integrating with insurers' core systems, once you have a universal data model, and this kind of engine for running analysis on it, there's no reason only to apply that to claims. So we've started to work in adjacent area. We've started to work in underwriting and helping insurers to analyze the people that are making applications, the policy applications that are coming in, and determine if there's anything that needs to be reviewed. We started working in subrogation, where it's not really a question of fraud. It's just that the loss may not be the responsibility of this insurer. There may be somebody that they can pass it on to. And we started working in financial crime, where insurers are increasingly looking for a view of risk which goes beyond just fraud, right? It covers compliance and regulatory risk as well. And so I think this has led us to start talking to the market, not just about claims fraud detection or claims automation, but about a Shift insurance suite. And the part that we're really excited about there is that we have the technical assets. We know how to work with insurers. We know how to make AI work in practice, as Dan was talking about, and actually drive results. And once we're integrated with an insurer and brought the data into our system, because it's living in the cloud, because it's in this kind of generic infrastructure, it's really easy to move between these problems, right? So we start with claims, but it's easy to then add underwriting on or start to look at financial crime, because we're running the same machinery on the same set of data and just working on a different business problem based on that. So I think even if you look at Dan's two demos, right? I think even from the early days, we moved from cases of isolated fraud to organized fraud, because we realized that the ability to make connections between people by analyzing data gave us an insight into these kind of networks that people didn't realize were related. And so I guess it's been for us this continual understanding that what we've built is bigger than we thought it was, right? It's actually become a generic engine for decision making in insurance. And so we're really excited to work with partners on multiple areas now and to help them across their business.
Thanks for that, Marcel. So I'm sure our audience is really excited to start working on this. What's the call to action, and maybe what resources can we share for customers to get started on this journey?
Sure. So We've got some white papers out there. We've got some links here that interested parties can go to check out more about Shift. We've got our website, a couple other publications things we produced from a marketing standpoint on claims automation, and we've got our global partner leads here, Marianne Siboni, and she's someone that can answer all your questions if you're not finding what you need on any of these links here.
That's great. So Marcel and Dan, thank you for sharing your time and perspective. I'm positive our viewers have learned a wealth of valuable information. What we learned today is that insurers are facing numerous challenges and the importance of leveraging AI and advanced data science to turn data into power tools to build a consolidated view where the importance of explainability and the data can lead to actionable items to identify and reconcile issues like fraud.
We also learned it's not enough for a system to be able to make predictions. You have to deploy a system that connects and delivers valuable insights to a team. You can have the best technology, but it's only valuable when the organization is able to operationalize and contextualize.
Then we saw some awesome demos that tied all these pieces together, where Shift really understands how leveraging their solution can not only apply to claims, but also underwriting and financial crime, amongst others. They've created a very powerful tool to solve different problems for insurers and beyond. So really great stuff. Johansson, let's move on to Q&A. What are some of the viewers asking?
Thanks, Edwin. So we've got a question in here from Anonymous. It says, this looks like a really neat solution, but do you combine our data with other customers' data? Dan, do you want to take this?
Sure, that's a great question, and we get this quite often when we're talking to prospects and customers. We do not combine our customers' data. Their data lives in its own environments, and we do not cross that data. This is an industry thing, and we've actually got a lot of our customers talking to us about, would that be a possibility at some point in the future, which of course we'd be happy to do it, but that's something we've got to get alignment on from an industry perspective on. We do not do that with an individual customer's data at all today.
All right, thanks, Dan. Here's another question. Do you have a prescribed data format? How much work do I have to do to take advantage of the system? Marcel, is this for you?
Yeah, I think this one's for me. So we have a preferred data format. It's easier for us if we get it in a certain format, but we've realized that there are so many claims management systems out there. There are so many CRMs, and so the system that we've built now, after years of working with customers on data integrations, has become really flexible. And so we take a fair bit of the burden on our side in being able to map your data to our data model, and that really lessens the dependency on internal IT or making changes in terms of data export. So there's not really a big barrier to entry in terms of integration. It tends to take longer to do the contracting process and the procurement steps than to actually do the data integration.
Thanks, Marcel. So we've got another question in here, and the question is around, what's the ROI or the return on the investment? And how would customers be able to measure success with this? Dan, is this for you?
Yeah, I can take this one. So first off, all of our customers that we have in production have achieved a positive ROI within 12 months. So the cost of the solution has been covered by their ability to identify suspicious claims and take actions on those, which is great, right? And then the actual ROI varies from customer to customer based on how they're deploying the technology. But they're recognizing clearly a dollar-based ROI on this. We see customers as good as from 4 to 1 to 7 to 1 to 8 to 1 in some instances. But again, as I said, it varies. But even more importantly, they're finding huge efficiency gains. They're finding that they're improving their process. They're able to scale their SIU organization more effectively, address more potential fraud as one example. And we see the same things with claims automation, where our customers are able to reduce the number of hours spent on handling a claim or reduce the number of headcount required to manage a certain volume of claims. So it's not just in kind of a hard dollars way. There's expense savings, there's efficiency gains, there's a lot of other things that customers recognize through the implementation and use of our technology.
And Dan, I have a question that just popped in. How do I realize this ROI? Is it something that's built into the tool, or how do I find out about that?
Yeah, so in the instance of using our fraud solution as an example, they're able to track and capture their savings relative to, or their mitigated values relative to what they've identified for fraud, and been able to successfully investigate and take action on by reducing the paid amounts, or by denying claims in some instances. And this is all done through our feedback mechanism that we have built into the solution. It's something that also supports kind of our machine learning, where customers can use our solution. I didn't show it in the demo, but there's functionality in there that allows them to say, hey, we're going to accept this alert. We believe it's suspicious. We're going to investigate it. And we learn from that. The models learn from that, right? Okay, this is a good alert. We want to look for more of these, or this is not. Same thing with the outcomes. Hey, we've investigated this claim. We believe we can take an action on it. This was a positive outcome. And so that's information that can be fed back in, and there's a mechanism for customers to provide that to us right within the UI.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Marcel. I can just see the efficiencies and the return on the investment with this solution. Looks like we're out of time. Thanks again for attending via YouTube or watching live and asking questions.
If you haven't already, be sure to register for FSI notifications and invites by visiting aka.ms/FSI Fridays.
We're also open to constructive feedback, so please send us your comments and suggestions at aka.ms/FSI Fridays feedback.
Be sure to catch recordings of our previous sessions on the FSI Fridays YouTube channel at aka.ms/FSI Fridays recap, where you can post any follow-up questions that weren't covered today.
If you enjoyed today's session, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thanks, and see you next time
on FSI Fridays.